Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the To The Point podcast. We're all doing well today, and we are back right now to do a second podcast of the day following the Shamus's Cleveland Browns, that disastrous performance they called football last night at in Heinz Field and their loss to the Steelers. But we are in 2022. We can only hope for better things. But something 2021 did bring a lot of great out of, and that was Shamus on the podcast. That was us talking about Breaking Bad, talking about some really good shows, and we plan to do it better than ever in 2022. And today it's going to be fun because we're going to finish talking about Breaking Bad, the last two episodes of the show, which are both really, really interesting. And we'll also kind of talk about what we're planning on doing next week and moving forward. And like I said, kind of this week, if anybody has any ideas, any shows that you really like, you want us to talk about, let us know. Otherwise, Shamus is going to be making the pick. This is, Shamus gives his time. He's going to pick a film. He's going to pick a show, and we're going to watch it. We're going to love it. We're going to hate it. Either way, we're going to have some hot takes about it. But Shay, always good to see you. How was Christmas, the other holiday, everything in between? How are the holiday seasons for you, my friend?
Holiday season was good. Yeah, it was certainly interesting with everything going on, but I felt I got to do enough and I got to see family. So that's all I really can ask for. In fact, probably the only person that I didn't get to see was my co-host and my good friend. So no, I didn't get to see you before you departed for Edmonton. And even though that was a short trip, I didn't get to see you when you came back either, unfortunately. But no, I have no excuse for the Browns, to be honest. That was pretty pathetic, and hopefully better things in 2022 for that club because they need some work.
Yeah, it was tough game last night. I wanted to ask you this because you're better at understanding people than me because I'm a cynic and kind of, a rube. When is it not okay to say Happy New Year back? When you got to tell people like, okay, it's too much. Like, yeah. When is the cutoff date for like, okay, no more Happy New Year chance?
I would say probably like today/tomorrow. If I got a New Year's tomorrow, I'm like, okay, Happy New Year's back. But I got a couple today. I don't even think I responded back with a Happy New Year. So I think that first few days, 1, 2, and 3 is usually good, but 4 or 5, you're extending it. That's my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Probably a couple days scaled back from you. Even the first is a bit much for me. It's a bit presumptive for me, but as you know, I just when I hear it, like it's the 4th of January. Like, it's just. Anyway, as you know, I like to criticize a lot of things in life.
I got to thank you too for I was going through a lot last week. Obviously, you were in Edmonton, which I thought was it was going to be an extension to get that done. The death of an extended family member, which I was sore about. So I was glad to finish off the season and the show. I wanted to come in fresh, and I wanted to give it all we had. So I appreciate the listeners for waiting for another week. And looking forward to today and breaking down everything Breaking Bad for the final time.
Absolutely. Again, condolences to your family because I know that was terrible, just a few days before Christmas. I can't imagine what that's like for especially the immediate family, parents and things of that nature. I mean, I don't think there's anything worse that could happen, right before, especially that holiday. It really hits home. So prayers and thoughts to your family and to Chad's immediate family as they go through this. But we ended 2 weeks ago. We talked about a lot. We talked about Hank and Gomi getting killed. We discussed Walter trying to get his family to pack up and move, but basically they gave him the cold shoulder and said no. He kidnapped Holly in between all of this, and now he gave Holly back, but he made the call to Saul's man, basically the vacuum salesman, to get him the hell out of Albuquerque because he is, he's hotter than the sun right now when it comes to people looking for him. And that's kind of where we start this episode, Shay. But it's his friend and his lawyer Saul getting picked up by the same man.
Yeah, yeah, we see Saul. He's also hot. He was obviously a lawyer for he's lawyer for Walter. He's got a lot of heat coming down on him as well, so he knows he's got to get away. And it's a great scene where first we get introduced to a great actor and a great character in Robert Forster, who if you haven't seen him, he's in a few things, but he's easily recognizable right away through the screen. And he's kind of this mysterious vacuum guy that we get to meet. And even though it's only for an episode, it's cool cameo. If if you're a QT fan, you recognize him from Jackie Brown, among other flicks. So he's basically picking up Saul, and turns out that he's an actual vacuum salesman. So they get to his little factory, and he's like, oh, like, yeah, you're hot right now. It's gonna take a couple of days to get you down. They take the pictures for the fake, the new passport and ID. Doesn't really sound like he gets a say in where he lives either, right, Juggy?
No, he basically says Omaha, and he goes, what? Nebraska? And he goes, yeah, like you're going there, like you're not going. And it kind of makes sense because I guess, Shay, in thinking about it, if you lived in a warm climate, which I wish, and I could speak for you, I think we both wish we did, and year round, and to think you're leaving a warm climate, I'd think, okay, he's going to want to go to another warm climate. Why the hell would you want to move to Alaska, or where I was last week in Edmonton, where it was -40 every day? You want to go to Florida or South Carolina, somewhere like that. So Omaha is really off the face of the earth.
Yeah, he doesn't seem too happy, but it also sounds like it's going to happen regardless. And this guy, he says, well, yeah, I got a place downstairs. You'll be hidden there for a couple days, but you're going to have a roommate. And Saul goes, oh, yeah, he's here, referring to our good friend Mr. White. And sure enough, I don't even know what we call him. Let's call him vacuum salesman guy. And he prompts on a little television he has recording in this room. And here's Walter walking around, pacing, freaking out. And we see him basically just throw a chair across the room. So we know that Walter is losing it even before we really get to see him.
Yeah, and like you said, Forster's only going to be in this one episode, but I totally agree. He's in the Breaking Bad movie El Camino, which is also cool. And so that's a little tease. But he's in that movie. He sadly passed away just after filming El Camino. So, but just his voice, when you hear it, you know who it is. For me anyway. And I really enjoyed him. He's got a soft kind of sense of humor with the way he says things. He reminds me a bit of Jason Bateman in that way, who I really enjoy. But you mentioned Saul goes down to the bunker, and he basically, Walter is on a rampage. He goes, I'm killing Jack. I'm killing this whole crew. Like, give me a list of some hitmen, because I'm taking them out before I get out of here. I'm not letting them take my life's worth, which is basically $10 million, and letting them get away with what they just did to Hank, whom I love.
Yeah, exactly. He's upset. Obviously, he's outraged, but he's like, okay, Saul, you're gonna call your 4 or 5 best guys. You got hitmen on, or you've got guys who know guys that have hitmen on speed dial. I need you to contact him. And Saul's like, that's good for Saul. He's like, no. He's basically like, I think you got to listen to what you're talking about here. And this is not something you usually hear your lawyer say, but Saul says you should give yourself up. You should protect your family and turn yourself into the police, because this is going to get pinned on Skylar if you run off and make it known that you're on the run.
Right. And Walt's like, no, I made that phone call, like, we're good. And he goes, no, because number one, she's going to get everything stripped from her. Every dime that she has to her name is gone. She's going to be broke. She's going to be going through trials. And if you try to give them money, it's going to end up like Mike when he tried to give his granddaughter Kaylee. the government's going to seize it. The police are going to take it. You have no options here. But Walter is pissed off with this conversation and decides to get in Saul's face about it.
Yeah. He starts to pull an old move and basically says, "Oh, I'm gonna finish this when I finish it." But before he can get the words out of his mouth, he starts coughing, and it brings him basically to his knees. And Saul's just like, "Yeah, this is over. Like, I'm out of here." And Saul, this is a couple days after he's been there, takes off. He's gone, and he's gone to Nebraska with our fixer.
Yeah, and that's kind of the wrap on Saul as a character.
They shake
on the
hands.
show. They shake hands, and Saul is obviously has his spinoff, Better Call Saul, but this is for this show. This is it for him, for Bob Odenkirk, and obviously a great character. But this is also showing that Walt's cancer is getting progressively worse because he's coughing. We see that he's starting to get thinner. Has lack of energy. And this is a presumptive theme over the course of this episode in particular.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We see what kind of measures he goes to keep himself alive when he does go away. But obviously, like we said, he's been sick. He's been sick for a while, and he knows he only has months to live. So he's probably taking that into factor when trying to make these plans.
So we're pivoting it back to Marie. I thought this was her last episode. I said that the last podcast. I was wrong. I forgot that this scene happened. But if you recall, Jack and his men took Jesse with them. And in essence, what they did is Todd said, we'll beat him, find out what he learns, and we'll kill him at home. But he wanted Jesse to cook meth because he has his crush on Lydia, who is, we got to get the product better. It's so important. So now, Jesse is working for them cooking, but at the same time, they go to Marie and Hank's because they know after beating up Jesse that he has all the tapes that he filmed with Hank and Gomi about what went on between him and Walter.
Yeah, it's a scene where Marie's driving up with multiple DEA agents in the car. And as immediately they get there, they can see that the door's been slammed in, and they take off, and the two DEA agents go in. And basically all the evidence they had is basically taken away. And, we can only assume that it's Jack and his men. Yeah,
and then we pivot, and we see Jesse crying about the young kid, Drew Sharp, getting killed, and they're laughing about him, calling him like a little pussy. And, and then it's this scene where we hear that, Jesse goes, that bitch Todd, like he just shot Drew. And normally you'd think like, okay, he just admitted that he killed a child. But Uncle Jack, the Nazi great human being that he is, says, no, fuck this rat. Like, we got to go kill him. He's ready to go pull him out of the pen. But Todd has to intervene before he can do this.
Yeah, Todd basically says, no, like Uncle Jack, it's okay. Like, we can use him. We can keep using him for at least a few more cooks. Like, the methylamine's almost gone. And, after that, we'll just get rid of him. And Jack slowly turns this into, okay, he wants to impress Lydia. And they kind of make a joke about it and say, really, this is what you really want. You don't even care about the meth. You just want to impress this broad. And, Jack and Todd doesn't say much, which kind of includes that he does like her a lot. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay. And it kind of saves Jesse's life, for the thousandth time on this show, what feels like. And, it's, I don't know if this is Todd looking out for him or just kind of looking out for his own interest, probably.
Yeah, I think he's looking out for number one below the equator. If you can catch my drift on that. But then we kind of hear them talking, as they move back into the clubhouse, and we see Jesse, and it's a really sad state of affairs because he's just sitting, he's in this basically like a box, and there's a cover above him so he can't see the stars or anything. All he has down there is a bucket for bodily functions, and a picture of Andrea and Brock that was first laid out as a threat as to if he tried to escape, things of that nature. And he's just beat to hell. He has no life. All he does is cook and then go back into this terrible position.
Yeah, a prisoner of war, you could almost say.
Yeah.
He's basically the lowest the lowest he's ever been. And one thing Jesse finds is that there's a paperclip on this picture, and he starts thinking, okay, maybe I got a real chance here if I can, unclip these. He's in shackles. He's got multiple locks on him. So he's like, okay, I'm going to take these chains off and see what happens. If I can get up there, maybe I can escape.
Right.
So he kind of starts trying to break those, I guess, and unlock himself from those. But that's kind of the last scene for that. And I believe we move back to Walter, who
Yeah, he gets transported and he's going to New Hampshire. So again, warm weather to a cold climate, and he gets transported inside a propane truck. Funny enough, and so he gets to New Hampshire. He's staying in this old cabin that is completely off the beaten path. He has no neighbors. He has a 5 kilometer plus walk to town, which he cannot go to because he is hotter than he's wanted everywhere. I mean, being spotted in New Hampshire would be just as bad for him. So he doesn't have a vehicle. He, Mr. Forrester tells us, I'll be back every month. I'll bring you your groceries. You tell me different things you want. I'll bring it, papers, things of that nature. But basically, it's Walter in seclusion in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and right away, Walter, as soon as Forrester leaves, he's thinking, okay, I'm gonna go somewhere. He's got this big barrel of money. He's like, okay, well, I'll walk off somewhere and see. And we see this scene where they share this moment where Forrester looks around. He's like, oh, it's beautiful out here, and Walter can give two shits about what it looks like. He's thinking about other things. And he starts walking. He puts on his hat, puts on his coat, and he starts walking. And he gets to the gate, I guess you could say, where his property line is. And he goes to open it, and he kind of stops. And I don't know if he gets second thoughts or he thinks about it. He's like, he just kind of
was winded, Shay. I think he was honestly tired.
maybe, yeah.
And it wasn't a long walk, but he seemed like winded to me.
Yeah, and he just says tomorrow. So obviously, you're right. He's just saying, okay, I can't do this today. It's been a long day's travel. I'll try again tomorrow. So he goes back, starts the fire, and I guess just sits there.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how it gets progressively worse. And if you know somebody who has had cancer, I mean, you don't get more energy. The more sick you get, the less able you are, the less energy you have. There's kind of a two-parter here as we go forward. We see that Lydia meets with Todd, as they do on every Tuesday, to talk about business and other things. And they say they got Jesse, they're cooking at a 94%, everything's going well, but she has one little worry. And that is that, well, Skylar has seen my face. She's threatened me. She's talking to the DA, the district attorney. What if she gives me up? Then I go to jail. We're all in big trouble. So again, knight in shining armor, Todd has to step in for Mrs. Quayle.
Yeah, it's a scene where the cops are outside the white residence. They're kind of watching over. Skylar's kind of inside watching them, kind of smoking a cigarette. And we hear Holly kind of start to cry. And sure enough, she goes. And instead of seeing Holly, she sees three men dressed in black. They have black masks on. And one of them standing over Holly, and the first guy grabs her right away, and we know from his voice, Todd walks up to her and says, "Listen, you're not going to say anything. You're going to be quiet, and you're going to listen to what we have to say. My friend's going to remove his hand from your lips, and you're not going to scream."
Yeah, and she's basically just shaking her head like yes, and he asked her, "Do you remember a woman that came to your car wash? She got black hair, short, whatever." And she kind of says yes. And he goes, "Well, you're not going to say anything about her, are you, to the DA?" And she goes, "No." And he goes, "Okay, that's good. That's good. Because if you do, me and these two other guys are going to come back. When we come back, we're not going to be as nice. And maybe, you know, basically saying, you rat on her, we'll come kill you and your daughter. And, you know, maybe your son if he's home too.
I mean, it's a huge risk for them because I mean, you got cops watching over the house, and obviously, if Skylar were to scream as soon as she entered the room, you know, maybe she had a weapon on her, things could have ended very differently. So Todd was taking a huge risk, just kind of showing how much he really cares for Lydia and make sure that she's out of kind of harm's way at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So that's happening. We'll get to Jesse in a minute. Let's talk about, you mentioned Walter, and we see days have gone by, and it's a longer period of time because Mr. Forrester is back. So clearly, I think we even mentioned it's been 2 months that, you know, he's been away. So he's been back once before, and Walter is extremely thin. Bryan Cranston would have lost. I think he must have lost at least 20 pounds for this final season, because he looks really, really thin. He looks like a cancer patient, quite frankly. And he's getting an IV, which is, you know, basically his form of chemotherapy, if you will, to kind of help him keep him alive. And they share this scene where, you know, he's like, I'll find the vein. And, you know, Walter's just so clearly just really sad. Like he's just got nothing in the tank. And he offers Forrester money to stay an hour just to spend time with him, so he has somebody to talk to, because he's just so isolated and so alone.
Yeah, I mean, you could think about how that would be for anybody. I mean, even some of the people who we call, you know, these extreme introverts.
Yeah.
It'd be almost frightening, knowing, okay, well, it's not even like you have the option to go to town. You can't leave this place, and you're here pretty much all day. Like, you can walk around the property, but you can only see so much. And he's been here for that long. He's only been there for 2 months, and he's already, you know, starting to grow lonely and starting to, you could say, lose it a little bit. And there's this interesting scene where Walter says to our good friend, the fixer, basically says, you know, if something ever happened to me, you're gonna come back here one day, and I'm gonna be dead. If I am, I need you to give all this money to my family, and, you know, somehow, some way. And, you know, this guy's like, okay, like, I guess. And then he goes like, you know, are you going to be able to, like, trust me? And it's good. This is good writing, I find. And, you know, if you're a card person, you pick up on this right away. What they were going to do, they're going to sit down and play a game of cards before this. And, you know, Walter goes, and he's like, and then he's like, okay, well, I'll deal the cards, because he's still got this IV in his hands. And the fixer basically goes, do you want me to cut it? Or do you want to cut it as a sign of trust and belief in the other person? And Walter says no, basically saying, yeah, I do trust you to get this money to my family after I pass, which is, well, I thought was pretty cool, because not everyone would pick up on that. It'd be an interesting little.
No, I didn't. That's interesting. Yeah, that I never thought about it that way. Yeah, so I think he would. But that's a lot of money just sitting there. And it'd be really hard to get it to the family. And that talk about putting yourself in position to go to jail for the rest of your life, is, you know, having that kind of money on you. I mean, so who knows? But Walter feels somewhat good about it. He wakes up, he's gone, and he's kind of back to this dark despair because he's just by himself in this cabin. Meanwhile, Jesse is cooking. He's doing a great job, and Todd decides to reward him with some ice cream. And, you know, he sends that down, and Todd's just like, yeah, no, you're doing great, man. Like, it's awesome work. And we're so proud of you. And Jesse's like, yeah, that's cool. He hates Todd, just for reference. And he goes, you know, he's going to put the tarp back on. And Jesse says, Todd, could you keep the tarp off? I just really want to see the stars. And Todd's like, yeah, no problem, Jesse. Like, it's good reward for you, man. And little does Todd know, Jesse knows he needs that tarp to be off in order to try his escape plan.
Yeah. So as soon as it's off, Jesse's back. We figured out that he's been, he was able to get the shackles off, and it's not quite standing distance. So he's got his blanket and his his poop bucket, and he's all up there, and he's got to jump even after being on top of all these things. He's still got to jump and get up there. And you got to think about how weak he was too, Juggy, because it's not like he's malnourished. He's basically living in a small cave in the or a hole in the ground, if we're being honest. And he jumps up there, and he's got to unlock himself from this cage, and he does it, and he gets out. But let's be honest, he has no idea where he is or how he's going to escape.
Yeah, these next couple scenes are really hard to watch for me. In particular, he runs, sees this massive fence, and all the guys are there just staring at him. Like, they put the flashlights on him, so clearly they were aware, or they have cameras everywhere. So he was never going to escape. Big barbed wire fence, and he basically is yelling at them like, "I'm not going back in there. Like, come kill me, bitch. Like, I don't care. I'm not doing this again." But Shay, they have way worse intentions than just killing Jesse.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we go up the street and we see that Todd is walking up to Andrew's house, and right away, something bad's about to happen. And whenever it involves Todd at this point, you're like, okay, well, it's not great. This is not going to be great. And she goes up, and at first Andrea is kind of on alert, but then Todd goes, "Oh, I'm a friend of Jesse's. I just wanted to come and say hi. It's not to startle you." And right away, her guard gets let down, and she kind of unlocks the door, opens it, and Todd goes, "Yeah, he's actually just out in that vehicle over there, this black SUV, kind of sitting on the sidewalk." And I'll let you take it from there.
So she goes, "He's in there," and he goes, "Yeah, like, you want to go see him?" She goes, yeah, of course. So he lets her walk forward about a couple inches, and Todd, just as sincere as he can, says, "I'm really sorry." And with the silencer gun, puts 2 bullets in the back of her head. And Jesse's being restrained in the back of the SUV, but being forced to watch it with, with his mouth being covered, and he's basically just screaming / crying as he watches, one of the loves of his life, Andrea, get killed in cold blood right in front of him. And he's basically told, "You pull this shit again, it'll be the kid next time."
Yeah. Just an awful scene. I mean, he knew it was a possibility to happen to him, to them, I guess, but
You gotta try. You're not just gonna sit there for the rest of your life.
yeah, well, you're thinking if you can get out of there and then go to their home, then maybe if you collect them quickly, you'll be able to get them out of there. But yeah, I agree with you. You got to try in that case, and he was able to get, I would say, halfway there without getting caught. But it's this facility that they're in. It's this kind of this big chain. They got chain fences in. There's a big gate too. It's not just your average Joe yard. It feels like a real compound almost.
Yeah, very much prison style. It would be extremely, extremely difficult to sneak out if you're especially one person. So he's put back in the hole, and he's back to square one, except he's minus Andrea, who he loved dearly. So Forrester's gone. We see Walt, he's still there, still kind of struggling, but decides to put on his winter gear and decides to go for a walk. And he's bringing a package with him. He wants to mail some money to Junior. So, but he gets to the gate, and he's kind of looking back at the compound, and Forrester has told him, "You cannot leave here. Like, no, if you leave here and you get caught, I'm not coming back ever. So basically, you're gonna have to survive on your own, because I'm not coming back with groceries, with anything." But he makes the walk, and he gets into town, and he goes to this local tavern. And funny enough, he pays this woman at a bar in the middle of the afternoon to call Junior's school, pretend to be Marie, and basically get his son on the phone for him.
Yeah, tricks him into going to the principal's office. She doesn't know the difference, so right away Walter takes the phone, and he's emotional. Obviously, this is the first time he's talked to his son since, if we can remember, their horrific scene where Skylar pulled a knife on Walter, and then it ended up leaving Walter Jr. and Skylar on the ground. Walter Jr. was basically protecting him, and that's that was the final image Walter Jr. really saw of his father. And he's like, oh, like, what's Dad, like, what's going on? And he's like, I have a package for you. He's like, I have so much to explain, but I don't have the time. And he's like, I have this package. It's Lewis to live at this address.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send it to you. It's for you. It's not for Lewis. And we finally hear Flynn, I guess, as his new name. He doesn't even go by Walter anymore. Kind of react to Walter trying to give him money.
Yeah, he kind of calls him a piece of shit, and he hates him, doesn't want to hear, you killed Uncle Hank, like you ruined this family, like you, and all true, and good on Flynn for speaking up. Yeah, he says, I hope you die, like you piece of shit. And he hangs up on him, and Walt's just kind of left sitting there holding the phone, holding the bag as well with this. But he sits down, and you kind of think this is it for Walter.
But just before you go there, but before he does that, he actually calls the DEA, and he says, who's in charge of the Walter White case?
Mm-hmm.
And then goes, oh yeah, who's asking? And he says Walter White. Then he leaves the phone, and then he goes to sit down basically to get caught. And this is what transpires.
Right. So he goes and orders the whiskey, neat, and the bartender's flipping through channels. And we see Gretchen and Elliot. And it's been a while since we've seen these two, but if you remember from mostly the first season, these two were with Walter on Gray Matter, which is what he helped start. They got all the credit for it. They got all the money. He's just a school teacher, for lack of a better word. And he's always been resentful of them. And he says, can you just stop this? And we see they're on the screen. They've set up a drug rehab grant, $28 million for methamphetamine users. So basically slamming Walter's life's work. And they said, the guy says, talking about being a PR move for the company because and he says, well, really, Joe, Walter, other than the name, he really had nothing to do with the company. He didn't, the science wasn't his. He didn't do anything. And we just see Walter look at the TV in pure rage.
He can't believe it. And from what we can tell and what we know, this is not true. They're lying in the sense that he was a huge part in a lot of the patents and a lot of the initial projects for the company. And of course, because of this dispute with Gretchen is why he left.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they're basically saying, oh, well, at this point, we think he's gone. We think he's dead. There's no reason. And they're basically trying to rid the disgust of any mention of Walter White with gray matter. And, that's kind of a $28 million. Okay, well, this is what we're going to do to get rid of him. And Walter, you're right. Walter is sitting there, and he looks pissed. He's like, what? Like he's probably thinking, okay, well, these two mother effers are lying about everything about gray matter, and more importantly, they're trying to squash, like you said, the life's work I just put in for the last 2 years.
And it's awesome from the show because as his face gets more and more angry, we hear the theme song come in, which I love. We start hearing the music of Breaking Bad start to play, and that just signals kind of a Heisenberg type moment because he had his hat on, and we hear it, and we do a jump cut, and we see police cruisers just start swarming the tavern. They got their shotguns. They're moving in. SWAT teams are trying to come in and get him. And they come in. The phone is still hanging there in vibration. The package is gone. His hat is still sitting there. And the whiskey is, but Walter is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Great way to end it, because, it's like we said, like you said, you thought he was done. He would look like he was giving up, and he got that little extra push. Okay, I have loose ends, and I've got to fix them somehow.
Yeah, he was a little bit like Michael Jordan in this moment. Getting criticized, he needs that motivation to keep going. And Walter's like, I hate these people more than anybody on earth, and I want to make, they gotta pay one last time for what they put me through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that leads us into Felina, the last episode, and you're kind of thinking, where the hell did Walter go? Like, he can only move so fast. But oddly enough, it starts with him. We see him. He's scraping off the window of a vehicle because it's been snowing, pretty strong snow, and he's scraping it off, but not enough that you could somebody could look inside, just so he could look in the vehicle, and it's unlocked. And we see him. He goes through the glove box. He finds a screwdriver, and also a CD of some Marty Robbins, I believe. Shay, I know you're the
it's an old country singer, I think.
yeah, I know you're the music guy here, but he gets the screwdriver, but he sees the sirens, and sees the flashing lights behind him, so he doesn't act right away. He just kind of sits in the car in the cold and kind of waits patiently.
Yeah. He's sitting there. He sees the lights, and he starts talking to himself. And what he says is, just get me home. If this is it, then just let me get home with this, and I'll be grateful forever. And like so many times before, he catches almost another break. Obviously, the cops can't see him. He's in a car that's completely surrounded by snow. So he's like, okay, well, as long as they don't come knock the snow down off the windshield, I should be fine. Sure enough, they drive away, and he kind of looks up, and it's this funny scene where he pulls down the light reflector, and of course the keys fall into his lap, and he's ready to go, and it seems like he's going to get his wish.
Yeah, so he throws in the CD and starts driving back towards Albuquerque, and we kind of go through what we've seen before. His 52nd birthday with the eggs and the spelling out the bacon, spelling out the 52. Him getting the gun from our gun manufacturer / black market gun dealer. He goes back. He goes to his old house. He gets the ricin. We see all of that. But what we didn't see is he's gassing up before he gets there, and his car's loaded with cash, and he's trying to find out how to pay, but he gets some quarters, and such a brilliant, Walter's very smart man. He gets to a payphone, and he calls Gretchen and Elliot's office, pretending to be a New York Times reporter, hoping to do a story on gray matter. And I'm sure this lovely receptionist is just thinking, oh, he's honest people out there. But she actually gives Walter the new address. He asked for an address. He said the wrong one. She gives him their home address, and he is just tickled pink.
Yeah, he's so sweet on the phone too. He's like, oh, thank you so much. Like, yeah, this means a lot. I hope to reach out. We get a couple pictures with them. Maybe it'd be, be a great story. And yeah, of course, Walter, just the brilliance that he is, even in, the late stages of his life, he's still running on full cylinders, clearly. I think it's that at this point, are we skipping to the scene where this is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the Jesse scene where he's making the box?
Yeah, there is that scene. Yeah, he's in wood shop. He's like in his old wood shop creating.
Because he talked about this a long time ago in the show about making this, and how much work he put in, and how his teacher pushed him, not pushed him like in a bad way, but push him like, this is, he looked at him and said, this is all you could do, like this piece of shit box he gave him. And Jesse really crafted this, beautiful handmade box, and stained it and everything. And it's kind of a flashback to this scene, where he's super happy, super young, super full of life. And then it automatically flips to him cooking meth, and basically he's like a dog on this chain, basically going around this lab, being able to cook. Why do you think the writers threw that in there, Juggy? A scene like this where it transitions from one movie to another.
Probably because it's such a, after seeing what just happened, him having no real anybody looking out for him, he can only dream of a life, because this is his life now. He can only dream of a better life. This is him. He's attached to the wire. He's cooking meth. That's all he has to look forward to. And maybe it's kind of the writers saying, not giving us too much false hope with Walter on the run, because maybe he doesn't know Jesse's alive for the start. So there's no real indication that Walter and Jesse will cross paths again at this point.
I agree. And I think at this point, it's like, okay, before Jesse, maybe liked cooking meth or did it for the money, he has no motivation to cook anymore.
No.
Like, this has completely ruined it for him. And, maybe he's holding on, thinking about these memories of making this beautiful box just because it's really the only thing he has.
What could have been.
Yeah, maybe, what my life could have been like if I didn't choose this way.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's just sad, because it's hard not to root for Jesse, because he's pretty good guy, in the grand scheme of things. So we go back to Gretchen and Elliot, and they're getting back from an event. They got their luggage. They got this beautiful, beautiful home. And basically how their home works is they have this courtyard, but it's like, it's hard. It's like you're walking into Caesar's, Shay. You know what I mean? You see those pictures of Caesar's Palace. You got that little awning underneath, and they're walking through pitch black, and all you see is Walter just sitting there. But he's in the corner in the pitch black, like they're not looking over, and he's sitting there just taking it all in. They're going inside talking about pizza and God knows what, and how, is this okay? And they're putting on music, and this sounds like they're playing.
They're talking about what very wealthy people would talk like, which is probably just irritating Walter to a T, because it's like, okay, these fucking idiots.
Yeah, and they put the alarm down so he opens the door, and he's kind of like, holy shit, look at this place. And he's looking at their family pictures, and he's doing his best life, just walking around. They're, like I said, getting wine and not worrying about some homeless man possibly coming into their home. But he's looking at the pictures. Gretchen walks around and she screams, and Elliot comes out, and Walt's just so casual. He goes, oh, I love your new home. Like, this is really, really nice. Like, I really like it. And Elliot is like holding a knife at this point, and it's a big knife, but he's so clearly not going to use it, because he's like shaking and acting like a normal human being, and I think in this scenario. And Walt even says, I saw you on Charlie Rose the other day, and I got a gift for you guys, but I'm gonna need your guys' help to go get it. So Elliot, drop that gun. Drop that knife, because we both know you're not going to use it. Just come with me to my car, because I need you guys to lug something inside.
Why I love this scene, Juggy, is because for them, they probably really thought he was dead, and this is his way of saying, okay, I'm the bug that can't be killed. Like,
I'm very much alive.
Yeah, I'm alive, and I'm gonna, I was able to get into your house, no problem. So you better relax with those comments you made on TV.
And it's funny because his car's like down at the hill here, so they have to drive up, get it, and then he's like sitting on a chair, and they're carrying in his money. We
don't know because when he says gift, we don't know if it's the rice, we don't know if it's the gun, we don't really know. And then the next scene is like them carrying in their money, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, anyways.
Yeah, so it's this big pile of money, and it's like, what are we bringing this in here for? And he goes, there's over 700 grand here. And
it's like 9 million.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, you're right. he says it's over. You're going to give it to Junior on his 18th birthday. My family hates me. Two people like rich people like you, there's no red flags because, you were partners with some drug lord scumbag. So it wouldn't be a red flag. The government's not taking money from you guys. No suspicion. And they're kind of like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll do it. And Gretchen is more hesitant than Elliot because Elliot shakes his hand, but she's kind of reluctantly like, yeah, I'll do it, knowing she's lying right to his face.
Yeah, Walter knows this, and
Yeah.
this is brilliant by him. As soon as he shakes his hand, he kind of gives a gun motion towards the window, and two red targets go right on Elliot and Gretchen, and they're both basically new pants, in the sense that, okay, well, like, are we gonna get shot? And he's like, okay, and by the way, I spent $200,000 of this money before I came here on two expert hitmen that are, if you plan on telling anybody about this, or if you don't give the money to my kids, you're going to be, he goes into great detail. He's like,
Yeah.
you might be on a beach in Cabo, or, sipping champagne in Paris. And next thing you know, there's going to be footsteps behind you, and it's going to be done. And I think he really does this because of the reason why, and the people who are behind it. But it's a brilliant move, because at this point they're probably just going to call the cops as soon as he leaves. But this little threat of fear is like, okay, I'm not to be messed with. You're going to do what I say.
Yeah, and it's even more like, okay, don't just wait till I'm dead, because you're dead. You can have all the security you want. You're gonna be dead. And we don't know who this is. Like, he has no partners, so he's leaving the area. He stops the car, flashes his lights, and we see these two hooded figures run out of the woods. And oddly enough, and I find this brilliant from the writers as well, Shay, to get these two characters in the finale. They were in the show throughout. I think I like that they found a way to put them in it. It's Skinny Pete and Badger. And they got the laser pointers. Walt asked for them back, oddly enough. He goes, yeah, can I have those back? And they're kind of like, we feel really bad about this. Like, yeah, it's not so good, man. That's
Moral.
Yeah. And he hands them both 10 grand. He says, how do you feel now? And they're both like, you know what? Oddly enough, I feel better about it now. Like, I feel okay. Yeah.
I totally agree, though. Adding these two in, even as just for the slightest, smallest scene, it's like just a nice little throwback, and it's a nice little cameo by having them both in there. And they reveal an important piece of information. They say, well, we thought you were still around. We thought you were still cooking, because the blue meth is still in the streets. It's still lively, and we were kind of hoping for a hookup. And Walter just kind of turns around and he goes, Jesse, like Jesse's still alive, and he's cooking on his own.
Right. And he just says Jesse, and they're like, no way, I knew he's still in town, man. I told you. And Walt kind of drives off. They're still in the whip with him. But so that's where we stand there. We pivot now to our friend Lydia. She's meeting Todd, and she's so routine oriented. They meet every Tuesday. And they meet, and they're sitting at the cafe, and she's getting her Splenda tea, whatever.
Chai tea, whatever she gets.
I don't drink coffee. So just water for this cat. But she rolls in a big suitcase, and Todd sits down, but we see Walt. He's over to the distance. He's sitting by himself, and he creeps his way over to the table, and they're like, oh shit. And he goes, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you. And he goes, just give me 2 minutes. And he says, I know time's running out for me. And the lady is like, yeah, you look like hell. He was like, yeah, I know, but I'm running out of money, and I need it right now. I'm desperate. And I found a way for you, Todd, to cook without using methylamine. which I know at your rate, the way you're producing it, you've got to be running low. This is going to save you, so much money down the road. And it's only going to cost you $1 million to pay me in order for you to learn the process. And they kind of, agree to meet at the clubhouse later, but Lydia's like, just go. And the waiter comes over, he says, Walt's not staying, and she gets her tea, and everything seems, Bob's your uncle, everything's fine at this point.
Yeah, super normal. Right away, as soon as Walter leaves, Todd's like, we're not really gonna, and Lydia's like, no, Todd, like, pick up the cue here. You're gonna kill this guy as soon as he gets to the compound. And yeah, no, that's kind of the end of the scene, and Walter's walking away. But of course, we know there's always more than meets the eye with our good friend Mr. White.
Yeah, he always has to, like I said, he needs to eliminate all the people that have wronged him. So we know Lydia would be in that category. So we now see he's out in the desert, and he's building this gun contraption. And basically, how I kind of wrote it down, Shay, it's kind of like a lazy Susan, if you know what I mean. Like, it's always spinning, and when you start it, the gun basically just fires, and it just continues to fire on this spinning type device. But it's an automatic weapon that will fire multiple rounds. That we know.
Yeah, what I think it is, Juggy, it's almost like if I mean, most people have seen a garage, and inside the garage for the door is actually on like almost like a chain. And
Right.
When you're opening it, it tightens the chain, and it's using that. And then he kind of makes a contraption above that so a gun can be on that. And that's about all we see. He sees that it works, but the only reason I know this is he's using his car keys to open it. So if you were opening your car keys to open your garage, it'd be the same effect, right?
Right.
So yeah, he's kind of got all this in. He's got a bunch of tools around him, and he's working on this. And all of a sudden, the scene we probably forgot to mention, and it was one night he's sleeping. He's so skinny, so frail now that his wedding ring just falls right off his hand, which can never be a good sign. And most people probably just would put it in their pocket. Walt takes a little string and actually wraps it around his neck, and it's at this time when he's working on this new contraption for his machine gun. It kind of pops out, and automatically I think he's thinking, okay, if there's any way I can see my family one more time, this is probably going to be the time, because at this point we know whatever's going to happen is going down that night. And he mentions to Skylar like that it's kind of his finale.
Yeah, so we then go, Marie calls Skylar and tells her that Walt is in town because his neighbor Carol saw him, and he's really thin, and she said, the police say, they're watching me, they're watching Flynn at school, they're outside your place, whatever, wherever we think he would go, because where else would he go? Like, who else would he try to get to? And it's a scene where Skylar's like, she's sitting in the kitchen having a cigarette, and she goes, yeah, okay, well, thank you for telling me. Like, I appreciate it. And the phone ends, and it's this great camera cut, because in their new apartment / home, there's these long beams in the kitchen, and the camera it's kind of like a documentary style, because the camera moves over from where the beam shielding, you can only see Skylar, not the other parts of the kitchen. But Walter is sitting there standing in the middle of the floor, listening to the conversation.
Yeah, and it's Skylar lied to Marie, basically saying, okay, I know he's here because he's standing right in front of me. And Skylar puts the phone down and says, you got 5 minutes, and wants out of there, which, to be honest, I thought was kind of gracious of her, because she doesn't owe him a thing at this point. Like, she's basically, or he's ruined her life in probably all aspects. We find out that she's got a kind of a greasy part-time job. Like, they're living in this shell of a home they used to live in. She's had to change to her maiden name. A bunch of details basically saying, okay, well, their lives went from 10 times worse since this has come out.
Yeah, and yeah, she's she's faced the brunt of this. She's really, and in the rewatch again, she's gone through a lot. And I did notice the first time, and we've talked about that she's not the one at fault here. It is definitely Walter and his actions. But yeah, he kind of says like, "This is it tonight." This is my curtain call. And
Yeah.
but he does give her one piece of information before he goes, and he gives her the lotto ticket. And he says, "Tell the cops I was here. Tell them that I threatened you, and tell them to follow these coordinates. It's where they'll find Hank and Gomez's bodies."
Bodies. And he says, don't, he says,
Use it as
this
leverage,
with,
basically.
yeah, use it as leverage with the DEA so you can get, get out of this situation that you're in. Yeah. So he's helping her in the sense that, okay, well, this is going to relieve some of the pressure that they put on you. One thing I thought was crazy about this scene, and so he starts with his usual rant, Dougie, and he goes, everything I did, and Skylar stops him and says, I've had enough of this. Like,
Yeah.
I've had enough of the same thing. You did this for your family. But when he finishes, he says, everything I did for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it really stops her in her tracks. And he says, everything from, basically saying the cooking, the being running around, I loved it and it made me feel alive. And he doesn't directly say sorry, but it's almost a sorry in the sense like I was the one who did this to you, and it was my decision to put myself here, not yours.
It wasn't because how I felt for you guys. It was me. I was selfish. I wanted the power and I let it get to me. It's completely my fault. He kisses Holly a few times. She lets him go. And then in the courtyard, there's like this little, I don't know what you even call it. It's like a little cottage area. And
It's like watching your clothes.
Maybe it's like just a common area for people to hang out. And there's a window, and he gets to kind of stand there, and he gets to see Flynn walk in the house. And Flynn wouldn't have given him the time of day, but I do think this was a scene for Walter to just kind of be like, okay, I get to see my son one last time.
Yeah, because I mean, he spoke to him over the phone, like we said, but his last image of his son was that scene where he's protecting his mother. So he probably, even though it doesn't mean much, at least it's something different to kind of hold on to.
Yeah.
In the last moments of what he thinks is his life.
So we know this is it for Walter. It's D-Day. And he goes to Jack's, he pulls up, and they're like, "Oh, what a car. Like, what year is this?" And he goes, "I don't know." And that Kenny jumps in with him, and they start patting him down. And, they're checking him out. And he goes, "I got nothing." Then they asked for a wire, and they got nothing. He goes in, and Jack's like, "You shouldn't have come here, man. Like, this is really stupid. Like, why did you come here? Like, I told you we were good. Just don't come here." But Walt says, "Well, we can do business." But Jack's like, "No." And he pulls out a gun, and Walter's he's kind of panicking at this point. He goes, you promised me Pinkman, and you partnered with him." And smart of Walter, he knows what will piss Jack. Jack is pissed. He goes, "What do you mean partner? What do you call him partner? Because you're cooking the blue. You guys suck. You guys don't know how to cook the blue meth." And he goes, "He's not my partner." And basically Walter says, "Prove it then."
Yeah, he doesn't like being called a liar. He's like, I'm not a liar. Like there's no quality of life for your former partner here.
Yeah.
And he automatically goes, Todd, go get him. Go get our slave boy. And sure enough, Todd's like, okay, well. So goes and grabs Jesse, and it was sad scene. He gets him out, and he's walking towards the clubhouse, and Jesse's, the whole thing with the chains, just demoralizing to watch, really. And he's kind of shuffling in. He finally shuffles in to the thing, and at this point, Walter has got the key slash, in his hands, detonator, we'll call it, in his hands, and he's going up to Jesse. He takes a look at him, basically says, "Okay, this guy looks like shit."
Yeah.
He's got his chains on, and he tackles him. He tackles him onto the ground, And as he's doing this, Jack's like, okay, get these guys up. But before anyone can move, Walter finally triggers his latest invention.
So yeah, he hits the button. We hear the trunk pop open. There's like 2 or 3 guys outside the clubhouse. They're like, what the hell? And then it's just bullets start flying throughout the clubhouse. And the guys on the outside are killed almost instantly. We see bullets flying. Guys are dropping like flies. Kenny took one in the head. And it's just a scene where it must have been 45 seconds to a minute, Shay, with just bullets flying. Todd, we do see Todd as he got to the ground before, so he did not pass. Jack has taken multiple bullets, but he's still alive somehow. And when kind of the bullets end, it just stops. Jesse and Walter are still on the ground, and Todd just like crawls to the window looking out. He just sees this contraption, kind of looking at it in awe, and he goes, Uncle Jack, Uncle Jack. But before he can do anything, Jesse is quick to get some revenge on his longtime foe.
Yeah, he basically takes the chains and puts it over his neck and pulls him to the ground. And for Jesse, this is a long time coming. He's probably been there for 2.5, maybe even 3 months into this whole every day of having to listen to his idiot, we'll say prison man, whatever you want to call him. And he's just going to town, wailing on him. Walter kind of gets up and just watches it happen. And as he's getting up, Jack's kind of starting to crawl around a little bit, showing that he's still alive and moving. And Walter grabs a gun and walks over to Jack, but at this time, that Todd's already gone, so he's got nobody to help him.
Yeah, brutal death for Todd, but I think it's fitting for what he does. Fitting. I think Jesse wouldn't have killed him with a gun. Like Jesse he'd want to hurt him, and chains choking him out. But this was a good way to kill somebody you hate. That's for sure.
It's fitting that Jesse's the one to take him out as well.
Yes, very much. Yeah, it wouldn't have been right if it was just a bullet from Walt. It had to have been Jesse. So Jack, this guy lights a cig. He's bleeding out. Like he's just like, you shoot me, you'll never see your money. And Walt just pops him right in the head, and he's dead before he can even get that last word out. He doesn't give a shit about money in this moment.
No, and he referenced before about how Jax took everything from him, took his money from him. And you're thinking, okay, well, maybe he'll stop, let him say where it is, or torture him a little bit. But the fact that Walter just doesn't care anymore, he's like, okay, I've set my family up. I could give 2 shits about my money. This is personal. And he says, this is basically for Hank. And he lets it go on him.
He needs to redeem himself a little bit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. After basically being torn down by this man, took his brother-in-law away, took his money away, took his credibility away. He was basically like, okay, like I have to get him back in the only way I can. And at this point, Juggy, there's only 2 warm bodies in the room, and you don't know what's going to happen. A lot of tension kind of going both ways.
So yeah, Jesse gets to his feet. Walt is standing there with the gun, and Jesse's just kind of looking at him like, what? Are you going to kill me? Like, why'd you came here all the way just to do this and kill me too? But no, Walt kneels down and slides the gun to Jesse. And Walt says, do it. You want this. And Jesse does pick up the gun, and he's like crying / screaming. He hates Walt, but we see Jesse looks, and Walt's got a little blood stain in his belly, and Jesse says, you want to do it? Do it yourself. And he throws the gun at him and leaves. Grabs Todd's El Camino keys, unlocks himself, and leaves the clubhouse and heads to the vehicle.
Yeah, so important for this scene to happen, because it's like, even Jesse says, like, he wanted Walter to say that he wanted this.
Yeah.
And Walter does give it to him. He says, I want this instead at the end, and corrects himself. but Jesse becomes the bigger man in the scene and really kind of takes over. And it's symbolic in the sense that Jesse's no longer taking orders. You know
Right.
what I mean? He's
Yeah.
not. He's done being Walter's puppet boy, and if you want something done, you can do it yourself. So I thought that was really, really cool that was in there. I didn't pick up on that the first time I
Yeah,
watched this.
good point. Yeah, because he's been a slave forever. He's doing what people have told him really his whole life, and it's gotten him to this shitty part. And so he goes out. Oddly enough, Walter walks out too. He just sees his contraption still kind of moving around, and
Yeah.
he's bleeding out. Jesse is unlocking the El Camino, which I don't know why people liked El Caminos back in the day, Shay. It's one of the
I think they're kind of cool.
I think it's the ugliest vehicle I've ever seen. Make a truck or make a car. Do not make both. Make one or the other, but
The
nevertheless.
Western thing, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they're in Albuquerque. But they share this one last glance because Walter is bleeding out.
He makes a call though.
He does. Right. While he's unlocking, he makes a call. Or Todd gets a call, sorry, from Lydia. And it's this funny, he's got the ringtone of this song of, I forget what the song is, but it's like a
Lydia. It's like
song.
Lydia,
It's like,
Lydia.
Yeah. It's like the Deborah one from Baby Driver.
Yeah.
And he answers and she says, "Is it done?" He goes, "Oh yeah, it's done. They're all dead." She goes, "Who is this?" He goes, "Hey, Lydia, I don't think you're feeling so well right now, are you?" And we see her. She is as pale as a ghost. She looks like Casper. And she goes, "What did you do?" And he goes, "Well, they're probably not going to be able to find anything in your blood or probably treat this, but that sickness, that would be the ricin that I put in your coffee earlier today, and that'll slowly kill you over the next couple of days. So long, Lydia."
He hangs up. Great scene to get rid of her, and also doing it in front of Jesse kind of symbolizes, okay, well, there's no more ties. Like, you have no ties to what your older life. Everyone we knew who was there was just killed. Mm-hmm. Skylar knows, but Skylar's not going to say anything about Jesse. It's just kind of,
she would have already.
Yeah, she would have gave him up already, but even if they did, they couldn't find him. And you're right. They share this very, this one last kind of moment together where Walter's looking at him as he finishes this call, and he just kind of gives him a solid nod. And Jesse does the same before he gets in the car.
So Jesse gets in the car again. There's the big gate. He just powers through it, gunning it, and it's this euphoric end to Jesse's character where he's kind of crying, kind of screaming, but kind of chanting at the same time, like he's finally free, and he's free of this hell, and whatever is on the horizon is better than what the current situation he was in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just it's like you said, he's just free from this weight on his shoulders that he's had for the last his whole life, basically, because he knows Walter's going to die. He saw the gunshot wound. He knows Walter is going to meet an end, and it's almost like he's putting a past life behind him.
So Walt, we hear police sirens. We know they're coming, but Walt walks, of course. He walks to the meth lab, and he's walking around, and he's touching the containers, and he's touching all the things, and eventually he collapses, and he dies looking up at the ceiling. And I love the way the music they put in. They play the song Baby Blue, and cops come in, and they're kind of walking around looking at the clubhouse and the remains, and Walter's just laying there amongst the lab equipment. So fitting to end such a great character and a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. Not probably not the ending he would have wanted, but the one he probably deserved.
Yeah.
Question for you, Juggy. Do you think he did this maybe even unconsciously on purpose, because he knows that it's going to look like him who was cooking the whole time, and it kind
A
of gives
little
Jesse
bit.
a bit of a freedom, like, okay, and it also gives him the respect, like, okay, I
Yeah.
was still able to
I
cook
I like,
for
yeah,
a lot
that
of things I
too.
did.
Yeah. That too, for sure, I think, because yeah, he's back in the meth lab. I'm the king. This is where I'm dying. This is my yard, so to speak.
Mhm.
This is my lane. And yeah, I thought this finale, you know, a show I know we both love, The Sopranos. The finale of that show gets criticized a lot. I really enjoyed it personally. Seinfeld's finale, I loved. Again, that's another one that's talked about. I personally loved it. Um, but this one's right up there for me. Like this is really well done. Every villain is taken care of. Walter is a anti-hero in and of itself. To put some Shakespeare into this, he's not exactly the person you're rooting for, but I thought this was full circle. The best person is Jesse, and he gets to live and he gets to move free.
The most deserving person to, to get out of this kind of an unscathed man was probably Jesse, and that's exactly who does. So it was well done, and for Walter, these last couple episodes, you're thinking, okay, well, he's at this point, if you're watching the show, you're like, okay, well, he's a piece of shit, whether you love him, whether you hate him.
Yeah.
And at least this last episode gives him a little bit of that hero dust before he kind of ventures off. And he saves Jesse, takes out his enemies, and he takes care of his family, which
Yeah.
was, I think the most
Primary
important thing.
goal.
Yeah, it was just his ending goal of his whole thing was to make sure his family was well off when he was gone. And at this point, we're never really going to know, but you assume with the fear he instilled in Gretchen and Elliot that they'll do the right thing and give the money to his family.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's the curtain call on this show. Really phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it again. I never get tired of this universe, the Breaking Bad universe. And
Yeah.
What happens to Jesse? Well, we didn't really know until the movie that came out a few years ago entitled El Camino. Same director, same guys that worked on the program. Aaron Paul stars in the movie. And Shay, I think it's only fitting that we wrap up the show in its entirety as we see what happens to Jesse Pinkman after this night.
Yeah, I told myself, I told you and told myself, I said, if I do end up watching the show again, I would leave that to the last hurrah to watch this movie. I've never watched it, so everything will be entirely new for me.
Wow.
Really looking forward to it. I always said I would enjoy watching the show one more time before I got to watch the movie, just because you feel the emotions, you feel the everything that happens. You get the background. Obviously, it's a lot of background, but well worth every minute to watching the show. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it weekly. It almost felt like you were back in the day when for you, I guess you're still a major fan of Survivor, and that's a week to week show.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of what this felt like. Even though I had prior experience, there was things that were still new to me, things that I felt like I got to watch again, which you always love. And I'm excited to watch this. Was supposed to be for next week. I texted you and asked you. I said, is this too much Breaking Bad? Like, we just got done the whole goddamn series. Are we going to extend a little longer? But fitting that we do this now rather than later, as it's so fresh.
Yeah, exactly. Get to the movie. I mean, the movie starts just a little fly on the wall to what you'll see watching this week for you and for the listeners. It starts him leaving. So that's where the movie starts, is him leaving the yard. So that it goes from there. It literally starts from him leaving the yard to what happens from there. So that's how the movie starts. So it's basically just a continuation of what we're talking about tonight. So it plays in perfectly. And we'll do that next week. And like I said off the top, if anybody has any shows, movies, a category, whether you're, say Ben Affleck or flicks with DiCaprio or Will Ferrell, whatever you want, let us know. Otherwise, it is up to Shamus Fillmore. He will be picking the next movie or show And he does have good taste. I will say that. He's right up there. He knows his good movies. He does watch Fast and Furious, so we will dock him a little bit. But he's not Dawson. He's not some other of our close friends that, Sawyer, Tiger King. But Shay, we'll talk about the movie next week. What do you have on the horizon for the rest of the first week of January 2022?
There's a couple ending points. I know we're still talking about BB, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, just a couple ending points for you. I wanted to ask you, we've now covered 2 shows with Cranston in it, Your Honor and Breaking Bad. What are differences? What are good things, bad things you found in each character? Obviously, his role in Breaking Bad is probably untouchable. Four Emmys is something
Right.
you don't just slide under the table. But was he the same kind of impactfulness in Your Honor?
Yeah, I think he's really good actor. I mean, he's to think he started in Malcolm in the Middle, which was just
Right.
a comedy. He's a comedic guy. He was on Seinfeld as a comedic dentist. And to go to this character with such depth and killing people in Your Honor, again, he had he's not a likable character. And I think what tells you how good an actor is if you really start watching the movie and if you hate the person and you really don't like him, or you're twisted and you like him. And I get that. Certain movies, I have a kind of an obsession with the movie Joker, I'll admit, and I don't love the character, but I do find him compelling. And so I think they're very different, of course. A judge but the judge was willing to break rank, to go against a sworn oath. And Walter, a school teacher, same type of foundation. I think he's very good at illustrating that the common person, the common profession, can do bad things when provoked. And I think that's something that is true about life.
Yeah, when it comes to family, both have both
Right.
are being done because of their family.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I know I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Breaks the edge and breaks the bad if we're referring to it. Anyone who's who's either not watched the show, just following along with us, if you're into stats, here's 4 stats for you that you may persuade you to tune in once in a while. Like I mentioned earlier, Cranston 4 Emmys. Aaron Paul won 3 Emmys off this show. Anna Gunn, as a supporting actor, won 2 Emmys. And finally, the show itself, 2 Emmys for outstanding drama series. So you don't make up those stats here, folks.
No.
Those are well earned. The actors go to great depths to get
Just
those.
to add to that, Shay, they were beating out Game of Thrones, which Game of Thrones is one of the more popular, and this is when Game of Thrones was good. Aaron Paul beat out Peter Dinklage for one of those. I know for sure.
Right,
Maybe
supporting,
was supporting. So yeah, I mean they killed it. The Emmys. I remember shows back in the day. They were getting interviewed before other programs. They're like, yeah, like why are we even going? Like we know we're not going to win. Like
yeah. It's just like almost Titanic in the sense that they're just ruling the screen every week, which is obviously difficult. Last thing, I'll have 2 YouTube videos that if you do follow the show and you're here at the end with us, watch The Real Walter White. There's a real Walter White. This short 20-minute documentary about a real Walter White who, oddly enough, was making meth in Alabama at the same time this show was being produced, and was considered the best meth cook in Alabama at that time. And the next is rewatch the Breaking Bad timeline. It's a short 15-minute YouTube video. If you're following along and you kind of just want to get a sense, because this only takes place over a 2-year period, which seems crazy because we were 5 seasons in, but I just found that so interesting that you could break that down and exactly see the timeline of when everything happens and all the events take place.
Yeah, I didn't know about that meth cook. That's interesting.
I mean, you talk about scary. That I'm sure there's some things probably Gilligan took from there, but obviously it's just funny that there's exact same name. His family life gets ruined from what he does, and the only difference is instead of Albuquerque, it's in Alabama.
Right.
Alabama.
Alabama, Roll Tide.
But yeah, no,
What do you have on the go the rest of the week?
not much, man. As you know, we're into the season, busy season for me. So working ton and watching hockey when I can. Looking forward to the Calgary and Florida game tonight. I'll be tuning into that one if it's still on. I can't. Hard to tell these days until you.
As of now, it's still on.
Okay, well there you go. If that's still on, I'll be watching that. But that's about it for me. Trying to live a quiet life as we try and pass the Omicron. What about you, my friend?
Yeah, I plan on watching that game tonight too. So we're simpatico there. Also, yes, podcast this week. Got the national championship coming up.
Right.
Last week in the NFL, this coming weekend. Probably.
I'll be sending you some heart messages. I know what this weekend means for you.
Yeah. But 2 Saturday games, different this year, new. I love that. Love that little addition. Yeah. But also, yeah, hockey, just trying to get back into it. When it comes to every news now, is just COVID cases and testing, but like it's hard to get excited to watch it because it's just all negative. And McDavid just tested positive an hour ago, so he might not be in the lineup against your buds tomorrow night in front of no people. So that should be riveting. But yeah, watch some sports. Big shocker there. And yeah, just I saw the campaign got added to Netflix, so I might watch that.
That's a movie we watched together. That was not too bad. I heard it's pretty funny.
Actually, I wanted to tell you about this before we wrap. I watched Between Two Ferns, the movie, this weekend. I had no clue what Between Two Ferns was. It's like Zach Galifianakis interviewing people.
Yeah.
I laughed my head off. I love that movie. I love the concept. It was like real comedy. It was edgy. Like his questions are so obviously bad. They reminded me of the Chris Farley show on Saturday Night Live. Yeah. But I recommend everybody watch that. You don't need to know what Between Two Ferns is before. It's just, I loved it because it reminded me of humor the way it used to be when it was good. And I just really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's unfiltered. You can go watch, and if you have a favorite actor, maybe a favorite singer even,
right?
Go look up that singer and go look up Two Ferns because they might be on there. He has guests all the time, and it's hilarious. I agree. I got caught in a loophole the other day on YouTube just watching all of his videos. So no, I didn't know. Especially
one with Paul Rudd that I find extremely funny.
Yeah, I watched that one.
Talk about him being Jewish. It is beyond funny.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that there's still a little bit of that humor around, and I mean, he probably takes a lot of heat, but we all know Galifianakis, he's not one to shy away.
He doesn't care. No, he does not care. Well, Shay, great podcast tonight, man. I know we'll be back next week to talk El Camino, but enjoy the rest of the week. Don't get too bogged down with work, and do some things. Omicron can't keep you down forever.
Yeah. Maybe go for a walk.
Ooh, I don't mind a walk every now and then. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll be back next week for the last time on this podcast. Happy New Year, and stay healthy and stay safe.